Hey, this is Mike Matthews from musclelife.com, and in this podcast, I'm going to talk about workout frequency and how it relates to making gains, building strength, and building muscle, and also food cravings, and what some of the research says on what cravings actually, like where they come from, and then what we can do about it so it doesn't ruin our diets. So let's just get right into it. Let's first talk about workout frequency because this is a pretty popular subject these days. A lot of people think that the only way that you can make any gains is by training every muscle group in your body multiple times per week. And by training multiple times per week, I mean like you would directly train that muscle group multiple times per week. Like not, for instance, you might perform your deadlifts on your pull day or back day. Deadlifts, though, train more than your back. They also train your legs. They also train your arms. But I mean, like, you would have 2 or even 3 pull days every 7 days, 2 or 3 push, and 2 or 3 legs, and so forth. And the what is now kind of called as like the bro split or whatever, a typical type of bodybuilding split where you'd have like a chest day, a back day, a shoulders day, arms day, legs day, and so forth. A lot of people either think or have heard that you can't make gains on that type of program and that you have to be training everything a couple times a week, or that you make much better gains on training everything a couple times a week. So let's just talk about that quickly. So first is let's talk about what the problem is with a lot of typical type of bodybuilding programs that have that normal or traditional type of one major muscle group per day type of approach. The problem is first off, a lot of those workouts are much too high volume. You're performing way too many sets and way too many reps in one workout for one muscle group just for what you're doing in that workout. So there's only, when you look at, if you're looking at it in a 7-day view, you can only perform so many reps. You only can break a muscle down so much in that time, or you start to overtrain. And that relates to training intensity, of course. So the heavier weight that you're lifting, the less volume you have to be doing in those workouts. So what a lot of the traditional type of bodybuilding routines that you'll find in magazines and such, where they kind of the big mistake that they make, or the big problem with those routines, is that it's just way too high volume. So a lot of times it is higher rep. A lot of times you're not even lifting that heavy weight, but you're doing 25, 30 sets in a workout for one muscle group, for chest or whatever, in just that one day. It's just too much. What you want to be doing in your workouts is, it's hard to say exactly what this point would be, but ideally you're causing just enough muscle damage and just enough progressive overload to maximize the resulting protein synthesis, the resulting muscle growth and kind of regrowth process. You want to like maximize that without you ideally would stop your workout at that point, basically. So I'm going to be actually talk more about this in my upcoming book, which is coming out in about a week. I dive more into the science of this. But there's a really good research review that I talk about in the book that shows that when you have higher intensity training, when you're lifting heavier weights, that somewhere around probably 60 to 70, they say about 45 to 60 reps, but in my experience it's probably about on the upper end of that, 60 reps or so per workout seems to be the optimal amount of reps for one muscle group that you're training in one workout. You start going beyond that, and it becomes a matter of diminishing returns, basically. You could sit in the gym for another hour, but you're not going to build, double the muscle resulting from a 2-hour workout as you would from a 1-hour workout. So that's one of the major problems with the typical, chest, back, shoulders, arms, that type of approach. Way too high volume. And the other problem is a lot of those workouts focus on isolation exercises. So, for your chest day, maybe it involves a little bench pressing, but you might be on the pec deck machine, and then you're going to be overdoing flies, and then you're going to be doing cable work and stuff. And those types of exercises just aren't nearly as effective as focusing on compound weightlifting exercises like the barbell bench press, especially the incline bench press, is particularly important if you want to build a full chest that doesn't have that weird when you don't have any upper chest, so the upper chest is flat and then it comes down, and then you have this big, bottom chest that kind of pops out. That's from doing too much flat and too much decline and not enough incline, basically. So incline is really what you want to emphasize, because of course it trains pec major, but there's also the pectoralis clavicular pectoralis, so it's called. It's kind of a strip of muscle that runs across the top here. That is your upper chest. It's a real muscle, and it just doesn't get activated nearly as well with flat pressing as it does with incline pressing. And decline pressing basically doesn't it activates it a little bit, but it's just not. Decline, I think, has no place in any chest routine, really. It's just reduced range of motion. That alone is a reason not to do it, in my opinion. So you have, a focus on isolation exercises instead of compound exercises, which are already less efficient in terms of building muscle and strength. But there's also another downside to that, is with compound exercises, for instance, when you're doing a lot of pressing, you're also training your shoulders. They're a secondary, muscle group that's getting trained, but they are getting trained. I mean, you've experienced this, I'm sure, when you start bench pressing heavy for the first time correctly, regularly every week, your your front deltoids get pretty sore. They're getting trained. So then when you come, let's say that like you're doing your chest work on Monday and your shoulders are getting trained as a result of it, and then you're doing shoulders work where you're focusing on your shoulders on, let's say, Wednesday, and that's where you'd be doing your military pressing and maybe your side raises. And it's not that all isolation exercises are bad, but the first exercise that you should be doing, the first one or two exercises of basically every workout should be compound exercise, and they should be heavy. You want to save your higher rep, your isolation stuff. If you're going to be doing that, should be later in your workouts. But anyway, so then you're training your shoulders again, let's say on Wednesday. So they actually are getting trained again. Now they're just the muscle group that's being directly trained. And then let's say you have an arms day on Thursday, where for me, this is my arms day, always includes close grip bench press. I think it's just one of the great tricep builders, but also it is now training your push again, right? So like in my Bigger, Leaner, Stronger program, for instance, it's a 5-day program, chest, back, shoulders, arms, legs. But the reason why people get such great results on it, and you can see that in the success stories on my website, I mean, I have scores of them now. People, guys brand new to weightlifting, gaining 20, 25 pounds of muscle in their first year and getting leaner. I have people that have been weightlifting like me before I started training this way. I lifted for about 6-7 years, and maybe I put on 25 pounds of muscle in that time period, and that's terrible for 6 or 7 years of consistent weightlifting. And I'd done twice a week splits, and I'd done pretty much every program you could ever imagine. And I did a lot of things wrong, obviously. That's why I didn't make good gains. But I have people that are in a similar boat. They've been weightlifting for quite some time, but they've never really emphasized heavy compound weightlifting. And their splits were messed up. And usually they're the bodybuilder magazine type splits, very high volume, tons of isolation. Even body weight stuff. Doing a bunch of push-ups and stuff on chest day. It's pretty much just a waste of time, unless you need to get better at push-ups. Unless for maybe you're in the Army or something and you need to pass your PT test. Okay, fine. But if you're just trying to build muscle and strength, push-ups are a waste of time. So I have those people that then come to my Bigger, Leaner, Stronger program, and then do great, and they're surprised that kind of split can work for them. Well, what you're also seeing is that then, okay, so you're deadlifting on your back day starts with deadlifts, right? Deadlifts don't just train your back, they also do train your arms, they also train your legs, especially when you're deadlifting heavy. So then when you're training arms again a few days later, they are getting trained again in this 7-day cycle. And when you train legs, now your legs are getting trained again, and that's they're being focused on. So the common argument on even that would probably be made against that approach is just that you'll do even better. Like, okay, fine, you can make gains on that, and it's pretty much just, you just go look at the success stories, it works. But some people would say, well, you'll do even better by actually directly training each muscle group, not as a secondary, not a primary and a secondary type approach, but like primary. Like you need to be deadlifting twice a week. You need to be squatting, basically like 2 back workouts a week, 2 legs workouts a week, 2 upper body workouts a week, push and stuff, and so forth. And usually what people will talk about when they're saying this is they'll talk about some research that has shown that protein synthesis rates tend to peak at about, I think it was about 36 hours or so after a workout, and then they decline after that. So the argument is, well, then what you want to be doing is you want to be working out, and then you kind of ride that as protein synthesis rates rise, and then they start to come back down, and you bump them back up, and in theory, it makes sense. The study that's most commonly cited that I've seen in regards to that is, if I remember correctly, it was like elbow extensions performed in like a couple sets of 10 reps or something like that. So I'm not sure if we can exactly extrapolate that to like an intense leg workout where you're performing like, let's say 12 heavy sets, heavy squats, hack squats, leg press, lunges. I don't know if we can exactly say, well, because with the elbow extensions at 10 reps or whatever, protein synthesis rates did this, then it will be the same with a big major compound exercise performed for a lot more sets with a lot more weight. Not exactly sure. I haven't seen any research on protein synthesis rates done with that type of workout. So if you know of something that if you know a study where they actually show that, then put it in the comments. I'd actually be curious to see it. So that said, let's just assume that's true. Let's say somewhere around at the end of, by day 3 or so, protein synthesis rates have pretty much come back to normal. You're no longer building muscle as a result of the previous workout. What you don't commonly hear about with those 2 a week type splits is the muscle recovery side of things. And once again, I'll be going more into the science of this in my next book, and I'll also be writing an article on this, which will kind of promote the book, but I'm going to be talking about this and linking all the studies and stuff. But when you look at research conducted with natural weightlifters, not elderly people either, but young college-aged weightlifters, and then also in some of the research that I referenced in the book, it also was, it kind of runs it includes college-aged men and then also middle-aged men, and you look at muscle recovery times. On average, when you are working out with any sort of volume and intensity, you're looking probably about 5 days that it actually takes for muscles to fully recover and repair the damage that occurred in that workout and recover all their strength. And this is where, I've emailed with and spoken with a lot of people that have done these 2-week programs. I've also done them myself. And what I ran into is what every single person that I've emailed with has also run into, and that's overtraining. That is, over time, even trying to work in deloads and trying to work around it, the workouts become progressively harder and harder and harder to do, and the kind of, those overtraining symptoms of almost like, I wouldn't say chronic fatigue, but I would become more and more fatigued over time. Workouts would get harder and harder. My sleep started to get messed up. I started to not look forward to my workouts. Just kind of classic overtraining type symptoms would set in. And every natural weightlifter that I've spoken to that have tried different types of programs whether it be, where you have a power day and then a hypertrophy day. So you have like a low rep, let's say lower body, and then a high rep lower body, low rep upper, high rep upper, and you're alternating between those, and where you're doing them twice every 7 days, or just like a push pull legs rest, that type of approach. They have run into overtraining issues. The people that have done well on them are people that are on drugs, that are, people email me and they're open about it, and I'll ask them sometimes if they're on those type of programs, if they're on any kind of drugs. And the people that have done the best in those programs are on drugs. And that makes sense, because when you're on drugs, your protein synthesis rates are much higher anyway, your body can recover much faster. I would argue you're probably better off training that way if you're on drugs. It would make sense. As a natural weightlifter, I'm not that you can't make it work, but volume and intensity is much more important than frequency when you're a natural weightlifter. Now, that's where you're training them. If you're training a muscle group every 5 to 7 days as a natural weightlifter, you're doing it right, basically, with the right volume and intensity. If you were to, train a muscle group once every 14 days, of course you're leaving gains on the table. Like, you should be training your muscles more frequently. But when you start training them, you start getting increasing frequency, to where you're training them, once every 3 days or even 4 days, you're going to have a hard time balancing that volume and intensity in your workouts. You're going to have a hard time finding that sweet spot where you don't wind up overtrained, and where you're not dealing with soreness issues going into your next workouts. Also, I mean, some of these workouts are very, very tough to do. If you've ever tried to, let's say you're trying, like, especially full body. I mean, a lot of people, they don't try to do full body, but some people email me that they are trying to do like a full body routine 3 times a week. I mean, just try to squat, deadlift, bench, and military press heavy all in the same workout. I mean, it's gonna take an hour and a half, and you're gonna be just completely wasted by the end of it. Even an upper body workout, when you're bench pressing and military pressing in the same workout, one of them is gonna kind of take a hit, because if you start with chest, which you probably would, then your shoulders are, of course, I mean, they are involved in that, and they are getting fatigued. So when you go to the military press, your performance is going to be a little bit impaired because of the bench pressing that you were doing just before it. So that's kind of the general overview of frequency. You definitely can make great gains training a muscle group once a week. What I do, and I also talk about this in my next book, and this is better suited probably to an advanced weightlifter whose body has kind of gotten used to getting beat up with a lot of heavy weightlifting, is I have my chest day, back, shoulders, arms, legs, and then I don't do it when I'm cutting because it just seems to be a bit too much for my body. But if I'm maintaining or bulking, I mean, I haven't really bulked in a while because I just kind of like staying lean, so I'm usually in some sort of maintenance mode or I'm cutting. And then I take day 6, and I'm going to be training some weak points. So for me, my weak points are my shoulders. It's kind of just the never-ending curse of not being on drugs, basically, is you have small shoulders. And that's one of the easy ways to spot druggers, by the way, is if they have those massive basketball delt drugs every time, because there are a lot of androgen receptors in that area. So when you get on drugs, your shoulders just explode. You can't even do anything. You couldn't stop it if you wanted to. So my shoulders basically always need work. So I usually give those a little bit more work. So those are getting trained 2 direct training days a week. My second day is a higher rep, lower volume. I'm not, I kind of blast them hard and heavy on one day, and then I'm doing a lighter workout on them on the next day. And then also I've been working on my lats as well, just because all in all my back is pretty good, but my lats have always just been stubborn. So I don't know, they've always just been slow to grow. And I don't want them to be huge. I don't like that look, but I'd like a little bit more. So that approach works well, where you're giving each individual muscle group a good, heavy, proper workout once a week, and then you're taking another day to give your lagging body parts a little more work. And I talk about that in my next book, and I just call it kind of weak point training. So that's basically everything I want to say in this video on frequency. And the summary once again is that volume and intensity is more important than frequency. If you don't have the volume and intensity right, meaning the number of sets and reps, total reps that you perform in those workouts and the amount of weight that you're lifting in those workouts, frequency won't save you. If you're doing a bunch of high rep isolation work, 2 to 3 times a week, you're going to get blown away by somebody who's focusing on heavy compound weightlifting, just training that muscle group once a week, for instance. Like, let's just say back or whatever. If you're doing a bunch of high rep isolation type back exercises a couple times a week, the person who performs one heavy back workout a week, heavy deadlifts, heavy barbell rows, heavy T-bar rows, dumbbell rows, weighted pull-ups, things like that, that person is going to blow you away over time. So yeah, that is basically everything on frequency. And let's now talk about food cravings. Particularly, people tend to run into food cravings more when they're cutting than when they're maintaining or bulk, when they're eating more food. And obviously it can really get in the way. Some people have a lot of trouble with it, and it really messes with their compliance, or it just messes with them psychologically. And the research of food cravings is kind of convoluted. There are a lot of theories, but not a lot of absolutes. What we do know is that certain types of Circumstances tend to lead to cravings, like stress. I mean, and these are things that, like, kind of when I in the studies and the literature that I've read, it kind of just confirms what we already know. People turn to food because they're stressed. People also turn to food when they're happy. That has been shown to just be correlated with, like, oh, you feel good, it makes you want to eat comfort food or whatever. And of course, when you're dieting, your body is actually under stress. I mean, just being in a calorie deficit, it's under stress. So that can just, increase stress hormones and increase the desire to eat, whatever it is. What is being craved is not like some people think, like, oh, I'm craving these potato chips. It must mean that I need some nutrients in it or need some salt in it. That we pretty much know that's just not true. That's not the case. What the foods that are being craved are normally just because of psychological associations that we have with those foods. So maybe certain types of foods remind you of your childhood or whatever. Those are the foods that your mom used to cook. I don't know, macaroni and cheese and pizza and pasta and stuff like that, or associated with whatever kind of happy type of feelings or times. Or whereas other foods that maybe there's some interesting research that showed that women tend to crave snack type foods, candy type, easy type stuff, like popcorn and M&Ms and stuff like that, as opposed to foods that require a bunch of cooking and then cleaning. Whereas us guys, we might just think of, like, oh, we crave ordering a pizza because psychologically it has some positive association for us. So what you're craving doesn't mean that, like, oh, your body needs something in that food and that's what you should be eating. So the cravings just are what they are. I haven't really found a good, I've heard things that could relate to micronutrient deficiencies, and I haven't been able to find any real reliable research on that. Even specific, like, I've heard, oh, it means that you need more vitamin C. I haven't been able to find anything on that. And I've told people that have issues with cravings, just out of curiosity, because I'd heard it. Could you try? I've heard magnesium. I've heard vitamin C. Could you try these different things? It didn't really seem to do anything. So dealing with cravings, really the best way to deal with cravings is work in foods that you like and just eat them less often, basically. So if you crave something like, let's say it's just something sweet, and in your dieting you're wanting to lose weight, then work in something small, like maybe 100 calories worth of sweet, whatever it is that you want to eat. For me, I mean, I like chocolate, so I probably just eat, I do eat chocolate every day, even when I'm cutting. Not eat a lot, but maybe 150 calories worth, but it's nice. It's my little dessert. So if it's chocolate, or if it's a little bit of ice cream, or I don't care what it is, it doesn't matter. Just work it in, and then you don't have to also have that psychological battle where you really want the food, but you feel that you shouldn't eat food because you shouldn't eat it because it's not clean and whatever. I mean, if you're familiar with my work, you know where I kind of stand on clean eating. You should, yes, eat nutritious foods, but numbers. Diet is numbers. So you want to work in a little bit of what you crave, work that in. If it's something that is hard to work in, like if you're craving pizza, yeah, you're not really going to be able to work that in every day. But what you can do is you can save pizza for your cheat meal. So when you're dieting, I do recommend that you take one meal a week and eat what you want to eat. Don't go crazy. Don't eat 4,000 calories, but don't worry about it so much. Don't think that you have to really, track the numbers. If you want to be real safe, what you can do is you can actually save up calories for that meal. So you can, let's say you're going to go have some pizza for dinner. You can eat protein throughout the day, pretty much save all your carbs and fats, all those calories for that pizza meal. So then when you get there, you need to eat 200 carbs and let's say 60 fat just to reach your normal daily intake. And obviously if it's pizza, it's going to be higher on the fat, lower in the carbs. So what? Fine. The calories, for that day your macros are a little bit messed up. Maybe your macros end 100 carbs short and 60 grams fat high, and it kind of balances out and you're okay. So really that's the best way that I've found to deal with cravings is don't get into the mentality that you can't have them, that you never can eat any of the foods you want. Just work it in. If it's something small that you're craving, if it is just potato chips, fine. Work in some potato chips every day. Doesn't have to be a lot, but just knowing that you can have the food actually does a lot to just kind of chill the cravings out. And whatever, that's just the psychological side of it, I guess. And then if it's something that's a bit more, it's too calorie dense to just work in, save that for your cheat meal, and then you look forward to it. And I think if you do that, you'll have a much better time dealing with cravings. All right, I want to keep these podcasts on the shorter side, somewhere around 30 minutes. So I'm gonna cut this one off here, and in the next episode, I may do another one by myself. I may be interviewing somebody. We'll see. I kind of want to keep it to a mixture of ones that I just, talk about a couple things that, because I get emails, all the time, messages all the time. So I like to address different. Maybe it's seasonal. I don't know. At this time of year, I get asked a lot about food cravings, and then also just I've been asked a lot about frequency because it kind of is just getting a lot of coverage, I guess you could say, in the space. So I hope you enjoy the podcast, and I will catch you next time.